They told us Africa had no fashion, no beauty, no fabric, no art. But they lied. Before the world discovered cotton, before Europe built its textile empires, Africa had already mastered the art of dressing. From bark beaten into silk-like cloth, to palm fibers turned into golden robes, Africans walked the earth draped in history, nature, and power. In the Congo forests, royal tailors embroidered symbols of the gods into raffia. In Uganda, kings were buried in bark cloth, believed to connect the soul back to the ancestors. And across the savannas, warriors wore leather cloaks dyed in ochre, glowing like fire under the sun. This is not just fashion, this is memory woven into thread. They erased it from the textbooks, but the truth never vanished. This is the story of Africa's lost fashion, before the world knew cotton. Centuries before European ships reached African shores, the continent was alive with creativity. Civilizations from Nubia to Zimbabwe understood something the rest of the world had forgotten. Clothing was a language. In Central Africa, forests hummed with the sound of bark being softened into cloth. In West Africa, raffia palms swayed. Their fibers spun into intricate weaves. Across the Nile Valley, ancient Egyptians and Nubians wrapped themselves in linen made from the earth's first cultivated fibers. But for most Africans south of the Sahara, cotton had not yet arrived. Instead, they turned to what nature gave freely: trees, grass, leather, and dye. Each environment shaped its own fashion. The forests gave bark and raffia. The grasslands offered animal hide. The deserts provided clay and palm. Every piece of clothing told where a person came from and who they were. It began with bark cloth, on of humanity's oldest fabrics. In what is now Uganda, the Baganda people stripped bark from the mutuba tree, soaked it, and beat it with wooden mallets until it became soft and flexible like fabric. Each stroke of the mallet was rhythmic, almost musical, a ritual passed down through generations. The cloth was then dyed in warm earth tones: ochre, amber, deep brown, the colors of the land itself. This bark cloth was sacred, wrapped newborns, clothed royalty. It shrouded the dead. Even kings of Uganda wore it during coronation, for it symbolized the link between man, earth, and ancestor. Further west, another revolution began: the Kingdom of Cuba in today's Congo. Here, artisans discovered the magic of raffia palm fibers. They stripped the fibers, softened them, and wove them into dazzling geometric textiles. Cuba cloth. Every line, every square told a story. Some represented kings, others fertility, or the river spirits that gave life. Long before digital design, Cuba women embroidered mathematical perfection by hand. Their patterns would later inspire European modern artists like Picasso, though history rarely gives them credit. In the south, the Zulu, Tswana, and Sotho clothed themselves in leather softened by smoke and ash. They crafted skirts, capes, and sandals from cowhide, decorated with beads and shells. The Himba of Namibia smeared their bodies and leather skirts with ochre and butterfat, protection from the desert and a symbol of pride. They glowed like living sculptures beneath the sun. Each region, each tribe, a different form of genius. If stories like this fascinate you, hit that subscribe button. Every week, we uncover more hidden chapters of Africa's brilliance. By the height of the Middle Ages, Africa's fashion systems were thriving. In the Kingdom of Benin, leopard skins were royal symbols. Only the Oba could wear them. Coral beads draped around his neck and waist represented divine authority and ancestral blessing. In the gold-rich empire of Mali, traders along the Niger River dazzled in woven garments dyed with indigo, adorned with gold dust. Further east, in Nubia and ancient Ethiopia, linen robes reflected purity and wisdom. In Egypt, fashion was already an art. Pharaohs wore linen pleats stiffened with beeswax, and queens wore gold thread wigs and lapis jewelry. Fashion was status, spiritual armor, and communication. Colors carried messages. White meant purity and spiritual closeness. Red was vitality, fire, and life. Black symbolized ancestral power and mystery. And when Africans danced, their clothes moved like language, flowing, alive, divine. Textiles were even used as currency. Raffia cloth was traded for salt, ivory, and iron. Fine weaves became a symbol of wealth long before coinage spread. Africa wasn't naked. It was clothed in innovation, centuries before the textile mills of Europe began to turn. But everything changed when foreign ships arrived. When Arab traders and European colonizers reached African shores, they brought cotton and cloth from Asia and Europe. At first it seemed like exchange, trade between equals. But soon, the imported fabric flooded markets, displacing local traditions. Colonial powers dismissed African textiles as primitive. They forced people to abandon indigenous clothing for Western dress codes, a tactic of psychological control. Raffia weaving declined. Bark cloth was outlawed in some colonies, labeled uncivilized. Leather clothing and beadwork were replaced by stiff suits and factory prints. By the late 1800s, centuries of textile wisdom were nearly erased. Museums in Europe began collecting African garments, not to honor them, but to lock them away behind glass. Fashion became another stolen heritage. But whispers of resistance remained. Mothers still taught daughters to weave. Warriors still carried beads. And in ceremonies, elders still wore bark cloth, defying the idea that only European fabric was modern. Africa's thread never broke. It only went underground. Don't let our history stay buried. Like this video so YouTube shares it to others, so more people learn Africa's true story. Today, the legacy of Africa's ancient fashion is reawakening. Designers across the continent are rediscovering what their ancestors created. In Uganda, bark cloth artisans are making sustainable luxury garments, now showcased in World Fashion Weeks. In Congo, raffia weaving has returned, blending old Kuba designs with modern silhouettes. In Ghana and Nigeria, traditional looms still produce Kent and Osso oak, living descendants of ancient textile genius. Even the dyes, indigo, ochre, and plant pigments, are being revived in eco-fashion movements. What was once dismissed as primitive is now the future. Sustainable, handmade, deeply cultural. Africa's fashion story is not about poverty or imitation. It's about resilience, adaptation, and memory. Every modern African pattern, from Ankara to Kent, carries DNA that reaches back thousands of years, to bark, raffia, and hide. The world may have forgotten Africa's first fabrics, but Africa didn't. So the next time someone says Africa had no civilization, no fashion, no art, remember this. Before the world knew cotton, Africa dressed in wisdom. Bark that breathed, fibers that told stories, clothing that connected the living to the ancestors. They tried to erase our elegance, our color, our craft, but the fabric of Africa still breathes through time. This is not just history, it's heritage, woven in every thread. Subscribe to Africa Mystika, and join me as we uncover more hidden chapters of our past. Stories they never taught you but you deserve to know.